The important thing here is not the nature of the behaviors, it's what's driving them. And so if we're going to use medication, the goal of the medication should be the minimum dose necessary to get above that threshold, rather than a large enough dose to just wham the kid or whatever, or the adult for that matter. So what can these children do? How do we teach them how to get above that threshold when they're below that threshold without using medication, if that's not an option available to them, or if that's considered undesirable by them or their family or their physician? And in a situation that might not be the optimal situation, basically I would suggest there are two choices. One choice is to change the child's environment. For our son, who was also genetically me, he was not doing all that well in the public school and was having challenges. And so we went to the teachers in his public school and we said, you have a class called Advanced Placement, AP classes. And the teacher said, yeah, those are for the smart kids. And we said, well, our son is one of the smart kids. He's got a high IQ. I can demonstrate that. In fact, that was one of the things that the educational testing specialist had told him. He said, you've got an IQ that's very good. And in fact, one of the major problems of ADHD is that people with ADHD take tests badly. So your IQ is probably 10 or 15 points higher than this test indicates. So you're a smart kid. So anyhow, we went to the school and we said, fine, put him in the advanced placement class. And they said, but that's for our smart kids. And your kid has a D average, a bad average education. And we said, but he'll do well in those classes because those are small classes. There's a level of mentorship with the teachers. The kids can learn at their own pace. I mean, these are all the things that would make these children very highly successful. And you're sticking him in a classroom with a bunch of average kids who he's way ahead of, and he's bored silly. And they said, well, we can't put him in the AP class because you have to have an A grade level to get into the AP class. And I said, so let me get this right. You have to prove that you can be a successful farmer in the farmer classroom before you can get promoted into the hunter classroom? And at that point, the discussion kind of devolved. and we obviously didn't get what we wanted from the public school system, so we looked around schools in Atlanta, and we found a school in downtown Atlanta that was actually educationally, academically run by the teachers. The teachers had, there was a solid curriculum. Final say, the teachers were God when it came to the curriculum. This was not up for negotiation. But in every other regard, the children ran the school. The children's school council made all the decisions. So from dress code to behavior. One of the decisions that they made was that you don't have to sit in your chair, for example. When we went to visit this school, I walked into a classroom, and here's one kid sitting literally on the teacher's desk. The teacher's standing next to him lecturing. There's another kid laying on the floor with his, he's watching, his head is up against the wall. There's another kid sitting in the windowsill. There's 2 or 3 children sitting on their desks rather than at their desks. I would say just only slightly fewer than half of the kids in this class, and it was maybe 20 kids in the classroom, were actually sitting in a desk. And the kids were challenging the professor, the teacher. And this was 7th grade. These were 13-year-olds. And they were having a debate with the teacher, and it was very spirited. And they would just pop up and, nobody raising their hand or anything. They were just having this debate. And my first thought was, this is a classroom that is totally out of control. This would be a disaster for my son. I don't think anybody should go to a school like this. Right? This is a mess. And then sometimes you have a preconception, and then you listen and get just a little bit more information, and all of a sudden everything changes. Your whole view of the world just changes. I stood there for a minute in my judger mode, right? What kind of classroom is this? And then I started listening to what these kids and this teacher were arguing about with such passion. And what they were arguing about was that if E equals mc squared, if the energy in a piece of matter is equivalent to the mass of that matter times the speed of light squared, if that's really true, if E equals mc squared as a formula is true, then the time and mass dilation theories that T equals 1 over the square root of m minus 1 over, I forget the whole thing, but the time and mass dilations that both hypothesize that it's impossible to go faster than the speed of light, and once you do, mass becomes infinite, that those actually contradict the original theory. And the students were like, no, no, this is how it is. And they were like doing the math, and the teacher was like, no, no, this is how it is. And they were arguing about the math of Einstein's theory of relativity. 13-year-olds. And at that moment, I thought, my son's going to love this. And we put him in that school, and in a year in that school, he jumped 3 years in the equivalent in the public school, and suddenly was a straight A student. And we went back to the public school and said, will you take an A student and put him in your AP class in your advanced placement? Oh, of course. And he did well, and he now has a master's degree in the biological sciences, and which is what he had told that original career counselor he wanted. Now, it took him a few more years of college than the average kid to get, and some of that he punctuated by becoming a teaching assistant, teaching and not carrying a full load. And another strategy that he developed that I thought was brilliant, that is available to college kids and should be, frankly, available to kids below college level, is every semester, when he was anticipating his next semester, he would audit a class. Auditing a class is where you can, with the permission of the teacher, you can show up for a few days or a few weeks and sit in. You get no credit for it, but you can be in the classroom. And so he would show up, and he'd spend a day or two in a classroom, and it wasn't, what's the content, or is this a subject that I'm interested in, because there are certain classes you have to take in order to graduate. The question was, is this teacher interesting enough to hold my interest that I can sit in his classroom for a full semester? Or is this one of those teachers who just stands in one place and talks in a monotone for a whole hour, and everybody who's really good at taking notes gets it, and everybody else is asleep, or is throwing spitballs, right? And so he picked out his teachers, and I thought this is brilliant. This is just these adaptive strategies, and carrying these adaptive strategies forward into life. The big question: how do we know that we're alive? And again, the answer, of course, is through our senses, through our sensory input. How can we control our sensory input outside of medication, outside of drinking a second cup of coffee, or taking some Ritalin, or if you want to depress your sensory input, taking a barbiturate? How can we modulate, or drinking alcohol? How can we modulate those things? This very simple technique, and I'll just walk you all through it. What this allows is for a child to put himself into basically a learning trance. Trance states are highly focused states. Most people think that they're lack of consciousness. They're actually hyperconscious. A trance state is a highly focused state. And so how do you bring yourself to here and now, this moment, in such a way that you can highly focus? Well, just follow along here. Just walk through this with me. Notice what you're seeing. Notice the amount of light in the room. Notice the colors around you. Be just very aware of the visual world. We live in a world filled with light. It's amazing. Everything that you can see. This whole visual, the screen up here, everything. And now shift senses and notice what you are hearing and the sound in the room. Some people moving, the silence. There's no air conditioning much going. The silence between my words, the tone of my voice. People upstairs. We're in a sea of sound right now. And now notice the sensations in your body, the physical body. Notice that gravity is pulling your butt down on the seat of the chair, and that your feet are in shoes. They may be tight or loose, but there are your feet on the floor. Notice how warm or cool you feel. Notice the senses of your body, and just be present with that. And now notice any taste in your mouth. The leftover from a cup of coffee or some tea or juice. Just notice your sense of taste. And now notice how you are vertical relative to the room. This is your vestibular system, your inner ear. Another sense. Notice position. Notice how everything is vertical and horizontal, by and large, in the room. And your sense of balance. And you might even challenge it a little bit. That's interesting. And now notice what you see again. In all the color. And then mix that with what you're hearing. And all the sound. And mix that with what you're feeling. And the taste. And being vertical. And just come to this moment. And you're fully present. And if you can teach that to an 8-year-old, you can teach them a powerful tool for the moment when they feel hyperactive. Because those of you who just walked through that with me probably noticed that there's that sense of, wow, I'm here. And in fact, in Zen practice and in Vipassana, it's like this will, you want enlightenment, you want to experience enlightenment, do this. Just sit with your senses and just cycle through them and be present. It's not even necessary to repeat a mantra or visualize something or be saying prayer beads. I mean, these are all different ways to do these kinds of practices. But what this does is let's say that you are genetically here in general, but if we kick in a little extra awareness of the visual and a little extra awareness of the auditory and a little extra awareness of the kinesthetic, the body, then where are we? We're above that threshold.